Let's face it, life can be brutal. It can be extremely harsh and unrelenting. It seems that at every turn we face heartache, loss, and brokenness in some form or fashion. From broken relationships to health care concerns and even, God forbid, the loss of a loved one. Sometimes life seems to beat us down until we don't have the strength to fight back. If this is you, if you're facing difficulties in life that are simply unbearable, then this week's Torah portion has a message of hope and healing just for you. Please join me for this word of encouragement in this week's 5-Minute Torah. Welcome back, Torah Tribe. You're watching the channel that connects disciples of Yeshua to the eternal Torah of God. Before I dig into what I introduced at the beginning of this video, I'm going to give a brief overview of this week's Torah reading. If you'd like to skip ahead, feel free to do so using the chapter links below. This week, we're studying the Torah portion of Vayeishev, Genesis 37:1 through 40, verse 23, and here are the three things that you need to know about it. Number one, the dreamer, introducing Joseph. It was obvious that Joseph was Jacob's favorite child. It didn't help matters, however, when God gave Joseph dreams and he decided to tell his family about him. Try telling your family you had a dream that they all bowed down to you and see how that goes over. Anyway, Joseph and his dreams created tension between him and his brothers. One day, his brothers couldn't take it anymore, so they decided to kill him. Judah, however, stepped in and talked his brothers into selling Joseph into slavery rather than killing him. So they concocted a ruse using Joseph's coat and the blood of a goat to let their father Jacob believe Joseph had been killed, thus protecting themselves from their father's wrath. Number two, Judah and Tamar, a taste of humble pie. In one of the oddest stories of the Bible, Judah marries a Canaanite woman and has 3 sons by her, Onan, and Shelah. Marries a woman by the name of Tamar, but he doesn't have any children because he was, quote, wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord put him to death, Genesis 38:7. His brother Onan enters into a levirate marriage, but only wants to enjoy the pleasures of intimacy and not bear children for his brother. Therefore, he suffered the same fate as his brother, as we read, and what he did was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and he put him to death also. This is verse 10. Shelah was too young to marry, so Judah holds him back, secretly afraid that Tamar is some kind of black widow feeding on his children. Judah's wife ends up dying, and sometime later when he visits his friend Hira the Adulamite, he hires what he believes to be a prostitute, but turns out to be his daughter-in-law, Tamar, who was still trying to bear offspring for her deceased husband. A scandal ensues, and Judah finally admits that he is the father of the child, declaring that Tamar was within her rights to behave as she did. Tamar eventually gives birth to twins, Perez and Zerah. And number 3, Joseph in Egypt. What goes down must come up. After his brothers sell him, Joseph is taken down to Egypt, where he ends up being a slave in the house of one of Pharaoh's officials by the name of Potiphar. Potiphar's wife attempts to seduce Joseph, and when he rebuffs her advances, she plays the victim and gets Joseph thrown into prison. Well, while in prison, he meets Pharaoh's baker and cupbearer who had been thrown into prison as well. One night, they both had a dream. They tell Joseph their dreams, and God gives him the ability to interpret them. Pharaoh has the baker executed and restores the cupbearer to his position. Before the cupbearer is released from prison, however, Joseph asks that he would beseech Pharaoh on his behalf for his release. But alas, the cupbearer forgot. This week's Torah commentary is called No Rest for the Weary, and it comes from my book, 5-Minute Torah, Volume 2. Our Torah portion begins by telling us Jacob dwelt in the land of his father's sojournings, Genesis 37:1. This statement contrasts the actions of Jacob with those of his father Isaac. Whereas Isaac was only able to sojourn through the land of Canaan, Jacob was able to take up residence there. This seems to imply that Jacob did not have the hardship of his father. However, the very next verse begins, Ele toldot Yaakov Yosef. These are the generations of Jacob, Joseph. This is verse 2. What does this mean? It means that Jacob's life was wrapped up in Joseph. Therefore, the essence of his life was robbed when Joseph was taken from him in the events that follow. Let me explain. Joseph was the apple of Jacob's eye. He was the long-awaited firstborn son of his beloved and recently deceased wife, Rachel. Jacob favored Joseph over the rest of his children, and he made this known by giving him a special garment that distinguished him from among his brothers. However, we find out that Joseph is taken from Jacob through a ruse by his brothers that makes his father believe he is dead. Because of this, Jacob is grieved to his very core and refuses to be comforted even after many days of mourning, saying, "No, I shall go down to Sheol to my son mourning." Genesis 37:35. Thinking his son dead, Jacob resolves himself to a life of bitterness and grief. Rashi, commenting on verse 2, says that although Jacob dwelt in the land of promise, his troubles did not vanish. Life simply became more difficult. Quote, "When Jacob sought to dwell in tranquility, the troubles of Joseph sprang upon him." Although he may have longed for a season of respite after years of his own sojourning, peace and tranquility were not to be found. We enjoy it when stories end with, "and they lived happily ever after." But the harsh reality of this life is that pain and suffering endure. They follow a man to his grave. From Jacob's perspective, his life would not end happily ever after. Why didn't Jacob have the right to finally enjoy his final days in peace without the hardships of losing both Rachel and Joseph? Why did he have to suffer such hardships, bearing the bitter harshness of life? Well, the Midrash brings a difficult answer to this problem. Rabbi Aha said, "When the righteous wish to dwell in tranquility in this world, Hasatan comes and accuses them. They are not content with what is in store for them in the Olam Haba, the world to come, but they wish to dwell at ease even in this world." Genesis Rabbah 84:3. Well, this situation rings true for many people. Sometimes we wonder, when can we get past crisis mode and simply enjoy life? Many people retire thinking they'll be able to enjoy some downtime, but then are faced with some of the most difficult challenges of their life. Life isn't fair. As the Midrash teaches us, there is simply no rest for the weary, and surely none for the righteous. James, the brother of our master, tells us that we must endure these trials with joy, for they serve to mold us into what the Lord desires us to become. "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." James 1, verses 2-4. Similarly, the Apostle Paul tells his readers that this life is fleeting, but that we have a hope that endures beyond this life. We do not lose heart, though our outer self is wasting away. Our inner self is being renewed day by day, for this light, momentary affliction is preparing us for an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison, as we look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient, but the things that are unseen are eternal. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 16-18. Just as the story of Joseph wasn't over for Jacob, the story of our lives is not over yet either. Although we may see only a dark and bleak existence surrounding us, the reality of the Lord's love and mercy is waiting around the corner if we can see beyond the veil set before us. The psalmist tells us, "Weeping may tarry for the night, but joy comes with the morning." This is Psalm 30, verse 6. This life may be filled with heartaches and brokenness, but we await the day when our tears will be wiped away and our joy will be made complete as we are reunited with our Savior. The Lord gives his people a promise through the prophet Isaiah, saying, "They who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." Isaiah 40, verse 31. And for those of us who are disciples of Yeshua, we can also find strength in his words. He said, "In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart. I have overcome the world." This is John 16:33. It's true. He has overcome the world. And if we trust him, we should always remember this promise that he gave us. No matter how isolated or downtrodden we may feel, we are never alone. If we can somehow see beyond the fog of our circumstances, we'll remember that we have a friend who sticks closer than a brother, and that the King of the universe has our back. I pray that despite your circumstances, you're able to see that right now like you've never seen it before. Well, this may seem unrelated, but if this teaching was meaningful and touched you, then let me ask you to do something simple that doesn't really take any effort whatsoever. Simply hit the like button on this video. Why? Is it because of vanity? No, it's because doing this tells YouTube that this video is valuable and it will recommend it to others based on how well the response is from the viewers. So if you think people need to hear this message, then simply hit the like button so that others can have the opportunity to hear it. Also, if you know someone who is struggling with hope, please share this teaching with them. You'll never know if it'll make a difference in someone's life. Like I said earlier, for some people, life may seem completely hopeless, but hope is always right around the corner. Sometimes we just need to hear it. Last, I would like to extend a huge thank you to those of you who have contributed financially to help support this channel over the last few weeks. It's made a difference, and I'm very grateful for you and for your generosity. For anyone else who would like to support this channel, please consider using one of the links below or giving a super thanks using the button below this video. Thank you for consideration and support. Well, that's all for this week's 5-Minute Torah. I pray you have a very meaningful and happy Hanukkah. Shine your light. Heaven knows the darkness of this world needs it. I'll see you again soon with another Messianic insight into the eternal Torah of God. Blessings from Minute Torah.